Well, hello everybody, and welcome to my show. My name is Jason DaCosta, and this is Consistent Preterism. Thank you for joining me today. Just cruising along and wanted to yap and blab a little bit about some stuff. The topic that I wanted to talk quickly about today is this Roman propaganda view. And I just wanted to, not dive into it too deeply because it's a pretty extensive belief, I suppose. But just kind of look at it from the surface and see if it's really a good choice to take when trying to understand what the Bible's actually saying. So the Roman propaganda view says that this story, basically, well, there's a few different views. It's not all that black and white. You got James Valiant, for one. You have Joseph Atwill, I think his name is, who is the original Creating Christ dude. But I think in a nutshell, we could summarize it by saying that it was Roman propaganda. It was a story created by maybe the Flavians, Vespasian as the father, Titus as the son, the father, son. I don't really know who they say the Holy Spirit is, but you can see that the coming and all that is related to them coming and destroying Jerusalem and judging Jerusalem and all that. And it goes on, but it seems as though they sort of tie it into an agenda, a Roman agenda that was created for a specific purpose or for specific purposes, whether it be to, keep the rebellious Jews in line or create this tale to maybe unify Jew and Gentile and create peace, which sounds a little interesting, the Romans creating peace. But I wanted to see if, based upon what we know from the story, if that actually sounds like it would work. To me, it doesn't really sound like it fits the details very well. When we look at the details of the story, we see something very different, right? So if you're IO, if you've been following me and you agree with my viewpoint, then you understand the New Testament to be something that not a lot of people understand. It's more of a story or a tale or an account of the regathering of Israel from all places where she was, both near and far, both Jew and Gentile, both slave and free, both circumcised and uncircumcised. It was a last days mission that kicked off with John the Baptist and would end with the coming of the Lord, where he would transform his saints, aka the 12 tribes of Israel, into immortal, angelic, never-die beings. That's what the New Testament, my friends, is all about. So we have to keep that in mind when we're looking at this Roman propaganda view from the surface, and we're seeing if it makes any sense. Okay, the story ends at the destruction of Jerusalem. The story doesn't begin at the destruction of Jerusalem. The story ends at the destruction of Jerusalem when all Israel was saved, which included the fullness of the nations. And they were taken away, supposedly, to this city in the sky. And that only had the 12 tribes' names written on it, by the way. So the Roman propaganda view it's got a bunch of different views, like mixed in one, right? As many views do. No one can claim that any view is perfect. There's a lot of people who hold the same view but might differ in certain points. That's acceptable and expected. But some of the views say that these letters were written far after the destruction of the temple. Now, you gotta catch the power of this, okay? So what they want you to believe, first of all, I got to tell you what they want you to ignore. That's even more important to take note of. What they want you to ignore is the Everest size amount of passages, statements, throwbacks, quotes, sayings, some right as downright obvious and clear as I come only for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. They want you to ignore all 27,000 passages that scream Israel exclusive here. And they want you to focus on a couple of passages about Roman characters like the centurion. Or they want you to focus on the passage that says, be sure to, give to Caesar what is rightfully Caesar's, or something along those lines. There's a handful of passages that they really want you to focus on so that you can see that this was obviously created by the Romans for an agenda. All the while ignoring the 27,000 passages that scream Israel only. Now, I don't know about you, but that doesn't really make much sense. Okay? Why would a Roman persuaded or a Roman tampered with story be so concerned with the salvation of Israel? Why would the salvation of Israel and the esoteric nature of the mission being that it's for Israel, why would the Romans be so concerned with that mission? Why would the Romans have this character, Jesus, who was supposed to unite, supposedly, the Romans along with the Jews and just everybody come together in this peaceful thing, according to some of these theories? Why would that be, right? Why would Jesus be saying things like he only came for Israel? Or why would John in the book of Revelation say that only the 12 tribes could enter the city and only they had the names on the city and only they could learn the redemption song and no one else could learn it? Why would Paul say that he came for those under the law? He was born into it to redeem those under it. Why would Hebrews say that he died for those sins committed under the first covenant? Why would Paul say that he came to give repentance to Israel? That was actually Peter, but Paul said that he died for Israel's sins. Right? Why would Paul say that his hope was that all Israel would be saved, which included the fullness of the ones in the nations? Why would Paul call the Gentiles in Romans 9 the lost sheep of the house of Israel when he quotes 3 passages all about the lost sheep when asking if God was having mercy upon Gentiles? What is going on here? Hold on. I'm in the middle of a rant. I got a bunch of people stuck here and nobody's moving. Wow. So it doesn't make any sense, right? If this Roman propaganda view is correct. Why would all these statements be in the New Testament? I don't know about you guys, but if I'm trying to push an agenda of peace and unity, or an agenda of, obey the Romans, or give to Caesar what's rightfully Caesar's, because this is obviously a Roman persuaded story. Well, the last thing I would do is push the Israel exclusive message down the throats of those who are reading the letters. Because that's what all these passages do. If you're not familiar with Israel only, then you better get familiar with it, because it comes with literally hundreds, if not thousands, of New Testament proofs and proof texts and throwbacks to the Old Testament to prove what is being said or to prove what's being talked about. It comes with a massive power-packed punch. It's no one-trick pony, let me tell you that. It's no two-pump chump, let me tell you that. Okay? It's a very serious view that needs to be taken very seriously, because it comes with a massive onslaught of ammo. So it makes no sense to focus on the handful of seemingly Roman interested passages, and all the while ignore the 1,700 passages that are obviously infatuated and obsessed with the salvation of only Israel and the forgiveness of their sins and the establishment of a new covenant for them, for Jacob. Those two things just don't go together. Furthermore, when you consider that a lot of these guys, these Roman propaganda guys, when you consider that they actually believe, some of them, that these letters were written long after the fall of the temple, well then, how does that work, right? So now you have this agenda by the Romans going out producing these writings and these letters, but instead now they're talking about a dude who came 100, 200 years earlier, right? They're just writing about some random dude who came, say, 100 or 200 years earlier, depending on when they think these letters were written. And not only that, but they're going to conclude this tale at the destruction of the temple. So, according to the Roman propaganda view, these writings were made to create peace and unity and this salvation tale and this narrative of joining Jew and Gentile together is all about creating unity heading into the future, heading into the great long future ahead of them. That's what it was about. Yet the story ends. It literally ends at the coming of the Lord, which was the destruction of the temple. And if you're going to argue that Mystery Babylon, the coming of the Lord and all that wasn't the destruction of the temple, then you're going to have a terrible time. I don't care who you are. You could be Einstein reincarnated. You're going to have a horrible time. It's just irrefutable. Every single book in the entire New Testament, without exception, talks about this soon-to-come end. And 50% of those books literally describe that end as A, involving the Jews, the Pharisees, and B, involving the temple, that not one stone would be left unturned, as Jesus said in Matthew 24 when he said all these things would take place in this generation. And we know a generation, biblically speaking, is around 30 to 40 years. So AD 70 is what the entire New Testament is leading up to. So how does that work is what I want to know. Why would Roman persuasion get involved, let's call it in 200 AD, and write a story that ended 130 years earlier? Now, mind you, the story says that all the saints were saved, that all those who were Christ were raised at his coming, that the curse was gone, that the fullness of the Gentiles already came in, that all Israel was already saved, and that all ended 100, maybe 130, 150 years before these people composed these propaganda-type writings. Something ain't adding up, because it just won't work. If you say the letters were written around the time of the destruction of the temple, and you believe in Roman propaganda, you have a huge problem. You have the context problem. You have the contextual evidence problem, and you don't have any. Okay, in a court of law, your evidence compared to IO's evidence would absolutely pale in comparison. It would be nothing. Nothing. Okay? Likewise, if you're of the Roman propaganda persuasion, and you believe the letters were written 100 to 200 years after the fall of the temple, like I believe many do, you still have a huge problem with the context and what it says, but you have an even more bigger problem, because now you need to explain what sense it makes to write about something that would conclude a century or two prior to when it was written. How is that going to unify a kingdom? How is that going to bring people into submission? How is that going to calm down the rebellious Jews? If you're writing about a story that clearly ends at the fall of Jerusalem some 130 years before you wrote it, not only would all the people be dead, but it would be completely irrelevant at that time. Not completely. They would still look back on it. But the times of those days when the temple was destroyed and everything leading up to that would have been totally fulfilled. So it's like, okay, the Romans wrote this story and they wanted to write a story all about the salvation of Israel, and they wanted to have it end at the destruction of the temple. Now, again, I don't know what planet you guys are from, but to me, that doesn't make any sense. There's no logic in that. You can spin it in any way you want. If they were going to write a story that was beneficial to them, they, number one, sure as hell wouldn't have made it Israel exclusive and Israel-centric. And it wouldn't have been about the salvation of Israel and nobody else, the gathering in of the elect from the four winds. It wouldn't have been. They would have probably included the Roman world. They would have probably included Jew and Gentile in a literal sense, apart from and outside of the mission to gather in the sheep. But that doesn't happen. This mission is only for the elect. And at the end, only the 144K are standing in heaven. And the second thing they probably wouldn't have done is they probably wouldn't have written a story that expired and was fulfilled a generation, 2 generations, 3 generations, a century, 2 centuries before. That makes no sense either. Because if your plan and your goal with this propaganda is to create something or to form a new system or to keep something, establish something and keep something for a long time, that being peace or a new religion, whatever the case may be, then you sure as hell wouldn't have it expiring long before you even release it. That doesn't make any sense. So this is why I urge people who are on the cusp of thinking this Roman propaganda thing is actually making sense to reconsider. And no, this wasn't prompted by anybody contacting me. But I do know that there are many people who like the Roman propaganda idea. But I can absolutely almost assure you that 98% of those people, maybe 99, definitely not 100, maybe 99, have never considered the Israel-only fulfillment at the temple destruction viewpoint. Because if they do, then they have to reconsider the Roman propaganda creating Christ view, because it just doesn't make sense. You're going to create a figure who's coming only for Israel. The people that you're supposed to be controlling, you create a figure that comes only for them and whisks them away into a heavenly kingdom at the end. Leaving you out, by the way. Leaving you out when you supposedly took the time to make up all this stuff because you had so much time and you cared so much. Big problems with that view. Very big problems. Perhaps one day I'll get around to reading the entire book or the couple of books. I'm not a big book guy, though, man. I just don't like reading books. I like listening to things. I do read the Bible, obviously, but I just can't sit down unless it's a completely compelling argument, which I haven't found many. Honestly, I haven't found many. And I can't read the myth stuff because those guys' minds are like soup. It's all over the place. It just bounces from one theory to the next, and you never know where you're going. You don't know which way's up. And I know some people like that. If that's your cup of tea, fine. But these theories really do not work. Anyways, that's where I'm going to leave it for today. I hope everybody has a great Monday. We'll catch you on that flip side. Bye-bye, everybody.